10 webinar polling mistakes and what to do about them. This is Dr. Jaclyn Kostner. If you're doing a webinar, it's important to use polls. This tutorial serves as a benchmark to help you learn if you're using them well or if you need to change the way you're using them. I want you to think about the best presenter you've ever heard. Obviously, that person had to be very compelling in the way that they delivered their presentation, and they had to have a very compelling message. But what really made it special was the reaction that the audience had to that speaker's message. As you look at these images 1, 2, and 3, which of these speakers is obviously not connecting with the audience? That's correct. It's picture number 3. And she's got people in the room. When we're doing a webinar, we can't see the people in all those remote locations. And so polling can act as a very valuable way to gauge our audience's feedback and to re-engage them in the session if we're using it effectively. And so when you design your presentation, design it for interaction. If we design it for people to sit back and watch it, they're not going to be watching it. They're going to be multitasking on other things. So developing that polling, integrating it into our presentation is a key part of our success. Importantly, don't look at polls as being a feature of the technology. I want you to think about it as a critical way to connect with your webinar audience. And that's what you're going to learn to do here. It is through that re-engaging them and that feedback that we can help to make our presentation webinar much more successful. So let's take a look at those 10 mistakes. First is not asking any poll questions during your webinar. If it's just all watch it and see it, you are background noise. People are already multitasking on other things like their email. The second mistake is to ask a series of consecutive polls up front and then none later. It's kind of like all of a sudden we have a lot of heartbeat, all these different polls coming in, and then there are none. When there are no polls going on, people will disengage, they will get bored, and they will start multitasking on other things on their desktop. The third mistake is asking a question that insults your audience's intelligence. Don't ask them a question where you're going to then show them another slide to show them how stupid they are. That's going to make them drop out. They will be insulted, and they will be not likely to come in your webinar again. The fourth is asking a poll question just to see if anyone's listening. If you ask them, hey, how's the weather? Is it cloudy or sunny or in your part of the world? People are going to find that not relevant to the content unless your webinar is for weathercasters. And so your question that you're going to ask in your poll must be highly relevant to your content, which is the next mistake. If your question is not highly relevant, then people are going to want to be multitasking on everything else at their desktop. Look at this woman. She's got this whole desktop of things that she's got to get done. Your poll must help her do her job better, or she's going to be focused on getting those other things done that are right there on her desktop, ready for her to focus on. The sixth mistake is not sharing the poll results for all to see. When you are logged on as a presenter, you are always going to see the poll results. But if you're logged on as an attendee in many or most of the technologies, they are not going to see those results unless you click a little checkbox. So be sure that you know your polling feature very well, that you know exactly what people are seeing. Better yet, log on with 2 computers. One is a presenter, one is an attendee, and you'll be able to see what others see as you're working with your polling feature. The seventh mistake is not making a relevant comment at the end of the poll that connects the dots. I was just in a webinar where we did a poll. We exited the poll, the results were shared, and then he went through and read each one of those items and how many percentages each line had. How boring. Don't give us that. Make a global statement about what that poll is saying, and that will be something that will re-engage people. You are the pro. You've got to make that poll result relevant. Also, don't say, oh, isn't that interesting, like he did. The eighth mistake is not knowing how to operate the polling feature fluently. Now, don't be in the middle of an audience presentation here and find that there's something you didn't load on the poll or didn't know how to operate or just couldn't quite make it work effectively. Like in one of the technologies, it's going to time out 30 seconds if everybody hasn't responded. There is a way to turn that off. You've got to know these features, know everything about how to operate that polling function so it operates fluently. Number 9 is only having a one-note kind of a poll. Unfortunately, some of these web conference technologies only have a one-note way. You can only use a poll. People can select one answer from the list, and you got to keep doing that over and over again. That's a one-note kind of poll. Actually, look for other ways to make that poll more interesting, whether it's a click all that apply. Maybe there's a drop-down menu that's a yes/no poll, or maybe there's some buttons to press, a yes, no, a check mark, or an X that people can use. But you want to be rotating the kinds of polls that you are using so that there is some variety there. And number 10 is not ensuring that everyone knows how to respond to the poll. I was in a webinar the other day that had about 7,000 people on it, and they were using texting, and they were also using tweeting as ways of putting questions into the presenter and responding to certain questions that the presenter said. Well, a lot of people don't know how to do that. And so there should have been some instruction up front as to how to do that, or instruction in the moment. Here's how you do that on your phone, so that everybody could be responding to it. How often should you poll? Well, if it's a small group presentation, maybe 20 people or less, there should be at least 30 changes in interaction that are going on every hour. If it's a larger group presentation, about 15 minimum per hour. That means you've got to switch back and forth between ways that we are causing that presentation to feel like it's very interactive. So when you think about polling, if you're having trouble creating those questions and trouble creating and making them interesting, then we do have a 6-hour webinar delivered 2 hours at a time that may be of interest to you. It is delivered on WebEx. It gives you a start to finish model for everything on the how to wow your webinar audience. And so if you're interested in that, please contact Bridge the Distance and find out more about it. Here's our 800 number that you can dial, as well as our email. We'd love to hear from you. We know that it will help you make a better webinar. Thank you. This is the end of the tutorial.